Welcome to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton, aka Possibility Man. We're committed to bringing you guests who strive to better people's lives and serve as a force for good in the world. Our guest today is Marcus Aurelius Higgs. He is a presence coach for parents of children ages 10 to 14. He works with parents who value building a strong relationship with their children by helping them maintain a meaningful connection during these formative years. Marcus also enjoys working with individuals from different generations and cultures. He believes his upbringing and years living among diverse cultures give him unique insights into cross-cultural communication. He's the author of the book, Inspire Life Through Words of Well-Being, Personal Meditations in Poetry. Marcus Aurelius, welcome to the show today.
Welcome. It's good to be here, Stephen, sir. Looking forward to this.
Me too. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. But first, just reminder to our listeners and our viewers, follow, like, and share this podcast wherever you find it. Your support matters and is appreciated. Hey, Marcus, you are a hot commodity on the World Wide Web today. I've been seeing you everywhere. Are you having fun?
I'm having fun. I'm wondering where you're looking because I am low key-ish. I mean, I like people see me where they see me. I'm accessible. But okay. And you know, whatever you saw, it's 100% true. I don't know what you saw there.
Well, I see quite a bit, and more than 1, 2, or 3, or 4, like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I said, yeah, that's an active presence on social media. Look, I know that you are, I know that you are a citizen of the world. Where are you today?
I'm in the sun, sand, and sea of the Bahamas. Let me show you this picture real quick.
Okay.
It's a father with a son underneath a coconut tree. This is in my living room. I grew up here in the Bahamas. My father's from the Bahamas, so yeah, in Nassau.
Okay. What else can you tell us about your background to help us get to know you better? That is, where were you educated, and where have you lived?
So I'm a third culture kid, which leads into my love for multicultural upbringing and so on. And for the people who don't know, I was born in America, but my mother's from the Philippines and my dad's from the Bahamas. So a third culture kid is the kid whose passport country doesn't necessarily match their identity or what their parents identify with. The blend of cultures. I studied communication at Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama. And straightway I went to South Korea, actually be a missionary teacher. And I still loved teaching, came out of the mission field in a sense. And I say my understanding of the divine developed and grew. So I taught then in Saudi Arabia, taught in Spain, taught in Thailand, and now I'm back in the Bahamas with my aging parents to be with them.
Yeah.
While we still have time. Yeah.
Yeah, you've touched quite a few places. So California, then Alabama, Saudi Arabia. What was your Alabama experience like?
I experienced it twice. So when I was a kid, I moved there when I was 7. My dad taught at Oakwood University. It was then Oakwood College. And then I went there for university or for college. What was it like? I went to an HBCU and it was wholesome people, quite tell you the truth. It was family. The beautiful thing about going to Oakwood, I served with those same people inside Korea. But then I also went to school with some of those people in California, and it's a network of family. That's the best way to describe it, sir. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. It's great to do that. And so education in Alabama, but you also mentioned school in California. Was this graduate school?
No. That was elementary school. So I moved to the Bahamas when I was 12. Yeah. And before then, I was in Alabama, and then I went to California when I was 7. It's
I
my
got
father
it.
was going from administration job to administration job. Yeah.
I got it. So, in all of these countries that you've lived, outside of the U.S. and let's say the Bahamas, did you pick up any other languages?
When people ask me, I say I speak one language. That's
Uh-huh.
the language of love. But
Uh-huh.
but yeah,
Okay.
no, no. I know how to say sorry. I don't speak your language in a lot of languages, but I do
Uh-huh.
speak Korean and I do speak Spanish. Yeah,
Well,
enough.
you do speak Korean as well. Look, that's impressive. So you have four languages, including the language of the heart, the language of love. You know, um, you're also, Marcus, a poet. When did you
Hey,
become interested in poetry?
oh man, beautiful question. I remember it was in the same room down here. Um, I was watching an HBO documentary called Slam Across America, and I
Hmm.
saw these people on stage. Now, one thing I need to tell you is I've always had a way with spoken words. However, I think I had undiagnosed dyslexia, and my writing wasn't so good in regards to spelling, so I didn't turn in my
Hmm.
work. And I thought I was no good at writing, actually. That
Hmm.
was a narrative in my head. But when I saw these people on stage doing what they were doing, I was like, I want to do that. I remember that feeling. And I
Hmm.
sat down and I started writing from then. And that's where it all started. Quite tell you the truth, that's where it all started.
Hmm.
And I think what kept it going was I used to freestyle, like freestyle rap, freestyle poetry, but I used to do it in my prayers as well.
Hmm.
And when I say holding space with the divine, the creator, and like just a flow of how to get it out, like that's just what I did. And
Hmm.
that tapped into something, yeah, deep down that still resonates to today.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So having lived in different parts of the world, does diverse cultures from the world show up in your poetry?
Yes, I I recognize the diversity. Um, what shows up in my world in my words is life. I write life,
Mm. Hmm.
and yes, it does. If I could, I
Hmm.
know I know you didn't ask me, but it's a short piece. It's divinity is in our greetings.
Mm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
when you're saying, I'll read it and then I'll explain a little afterwards.
Yeah.
But it
Tell us
says,
what you're reading. Tell us where you're reading from.
so this is from Inspire Life Through Words of Well-being,
From your
personal
book. You're
meditation
reading from your
for
book.
my book.
Okay.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
divinity is in our greetings. What's in the meaning of our greetings between our comings and leavings? Is it the divine in me recognizing itself in you? Or is it
Mhm.
more true? The divine in you seeing itself in me? Well, whichever truth you choose of the two meanings, divine is always ever present, self awareness residing in the flowing fullness of both our beings.
Mhm. I like it.
When
That's
you say
cool stuff.
when you say namaste, it means they do that in the Hindu Indian tradition where bowing
Yeah.
saying the divine in me recognizes itself in you, or adios means to
Yeah.
God, or good morning means God morning. In
Mhm.
all these different cultures, we're recognizing God, but
Uh-huh.
it's in our comings and leavings. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. That's a nice poem. Perhaps you'll read some more for us. So in thinking about your poetry and thinking about your book and thinking about your work, would you say that you have a worldview that you have when you look out into the world? Is there a viewpoint that you embrace in your heart?
Yes, and what I mean by that is I try to look at life at how life is looking at it, right? The fullness
Hmm.
of it all. And I understand, I still recognize myself, my individual Marcus, as
Hmm.
a seemingly separated single perspective. Yet when I meet you, Stephen, excuse me, I say, there's something of life that I can learn from you. So I approach you with curiosity. Because if I was born in your same context, your same time, your same space, I would have made all your same decisions.
Hmm.
And I want to understand that. So that's why I approach you with curiosity and no judgment. It's just like, yeah, tell me about life. And that's
Mm,
how I understand about life.
yeah.
It's easy to do that
So
with people with a nice smile, yeah. And then
mm,
it's harder to do it with people who meet you a different way. But if
yeah,
you continually do that, you start to understand who people are
yeah,
and you start to understand
I
who
hear
you are.
you.
Yeah.
And you look, you said a lot in that, in what you just shared, and I want to make sure to help try to get you to unpack it a little more. But firstly, though, when you refer to life, what are you talking about?
Mhm. Um, I interchange the word life with divine,
Mhm.
with God, with source, with I think I'm also talking about in the Old Testament spoke of pneuma, which is the spirit, the breath. Um, when I speak of life, we really don't know how life got here. It is a mystery. Well, for some people who say, but I mean,
Mhm.
there's no conclusive of. We believe it by faith. Some people, but what I'm speaking of as life is what is in the life force that is passed down from generation to generation to generation.
Yeah,
Um, maybe not maybe, but I'm speaking of consciousness, the fullness and the
yeah,
awareness of it all too.
yeah,
The
yeah.
I
I mean,
am.
I like it. I like it. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get
yeah,
you. So life, what you're saying is that you acknowledge that there is, all that is. And we've been
yeah,
referred to all that is by many, labels like life, the divine, God, the supreme. But you
sure.
acknowledge that life is. I got it.
In positive psychology, there's a M in the PERMA model, and
Mm,
that M means meaning. It's what fulfills us, right? And meaning is recognizing something greater than us.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. I got you.
yeah,
Yeah. So, when you were speaking, you said that you approach beings or people with curiosity because you have this understanding that life is flowing through them. So therefore, you do not approach people with a lot of judgments. Can you say more about what you mean?
sure.
Because I think
Um,
if I
mhm,
heard you correctly, you said, if I grew up, and I'm trying to paraphrase you now. If you
sure,
grew
sure.
up, and let's pick a state, pick a country. If you had grown
In your
up under
same
those
context.
conditions, you would probably, exhibit the same kinds of values that person has. So tell us more about
Yeah.
that, your understanding of that.
Yeah. Um, so I said if I was born in your context, and context, there's no meaning without context.
Mhm.
Context is space and time, your location and when, where and when. I believe that all virtues and values, and virtues are the 24 characteristic traits from positive psychology, and again, and personally, I believe those are characteristics of the divine. These are things such as gratitude, leadership. These are the things that work towards the well-being of an individual and the
Mhm.
well-being of another person. And then I also believe that people have values, things that they hold important. And that's where we get the rub. That's where we get the tension. And there's actually supposed to be tension in life. That's actually how life grows. That's where growth comes from. It's a stress response.
Mhm.
And we can talk little bit more about that later. But when I know that I'm safe and I'm loved,
Mhm.
then I can have curiosity to be like, okay, it's okay. Like, tell me about your experience. Let me be here for you to hold that story with you because your story is actually helping me understand my story. It's helping me to understand and put these pieces together. And I think that's actually what bigger consciousness life is doing. It's understanding
Mhm.
itself through all of us, giving an understanding
Mhm.
back to it.
Hmm. Yeah. So I want to probe this just a little longer, given what you've
Hey,
just
let's go.
shared.
You're the host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what does this point of view that you just shared inform you or say to you about compassion?
Yeah. I love words, so I break it down. Calm means with, passion comes from the word pati, the Latin passion, meaning the suffering. That's why it's called the Passion of Christ. When you have compassion for somebody, you are, there are different layers of it, but another word is empathy, and you're recognizing the suffering that another person is going through.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you can recognize that, you also recognize a shared human experience.
Mm,
You're not human if you've not been up and you've not been down. But as you go through the ups and downs, you reach back and you help other people who are going through ups and downs.
mhm,
What does it mean for me when I'm thinking of compassion? When you can, I think a lot of male loneliness actually comes from not caring for other people, because when you care for others, it stretches you to have understanding and build relationships.
mhm.
This is what fulfills me, quite honestly. And I think if we tap into that early, if we teach that to kids early in the formative years, we could safeguard them against a lot of mental health issues.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, and I tell you, I mean, a lot of big kids, grown-up kids would benefit as well. This is I want to spend a
Yeah.
little more time with
Yeah.
this. So, from
Hmm.
what you've shared, how are you informed about forgiveness?
Forgiveness. Again, I'm going to break down the word. And this is just my, not that this is right, this is just my approach to it. This is my philosophy. Forgiveness means I'm giving you even before you ask. So if I'm secure and I know I'm the fullness, and when I say I'm the fullness, like I, I'm not, sorry to explain the fullness. Paul in his writing before Philippians 4:12, when he said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, he says, I know how to abase and I know how to abound. I know how to have nothing and I know how to have everything. And my identity isn't caught up in that because I know what I'm connected to is something greater. I'm the
Mhm,
fullness of it, right? That's where my security comes from.
mhm,
Whatever you do, Stephen, you can't take my peace. You can't take my security.
mhm,
And because of that, whenever you do something that is quote unquote wrong, now I have
mhm,
discernment. Don't get me wrong. I have discernment of what I want and what I'm working towards and working towards a well-being. But when you do something that is wrong or not right towards me, I see it as you're not recognizing your fullness. And I've given
mhm.
back to you that peace even before you asked me for it.
Yeah.
Now you can ask me for it and I'll accept it, and we can move on from there. And then I'll notice patterns if not, and that's a whole nother conversation. But in order to keep my peace, I forgive you. That's
Mhm.
what forgiveness means to me. Yeah.
Got it. I love it. Yeah. Okay, so I want to look more closely at your book. We've really been talking broadly about your book already, but I want you to look a little more. Words of Well-Being. And in the subtitle, the word meditations shows up. And that
Yeah.
reminds me of your namesake, Marcus Aurelius, in the book of Meditations. Wait a minute. Yeah, yeah.
Just copy.
So, yeah, so let's roll back. Let me ask you this. Did your parents talk with you about their decision to call you Marcus Aurelius?
My father heard it on the radio in Riverside, while my mom was pregnant with me. He had a quote. He's like, "Hey, this guy has something good to say." I
Yeah.
can't say that he was a student of Stoicism, but
Mhm,
this is the beautiful thing, right, Charles? That's Charles Stephen. Um,
mhm,
Marcus was writing a book to himself for himself, and he wrote these words two centuries ago. Yet my father was still inspired by them as they echoed down through the eternity of time.
mhm.
So much so, he's like, "Hey, let me name this kid after him." And his words have influenced my life.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Yeah.
I think that's,
And
yeah.
sorry, his words would have been lost in antiquity if his servant hadn't have kept them and passed them on. So like he
Yeah.
still would have lived his life in the
Mhm.
fullness there, even if his words didn't get discovered.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think it's a powerful name. And I think people who choose certain names for their children have something in mind. And clearly, your parents had something in mind for you. Now, in your book, looked at some of the teasers about your book, and one of them says that in your book that you wrestle with some of life's biggest questions. Would you say that's true? That in your book you deal with some of life's big questions?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Um, yes, yes.
okay.
I
Can you think of one of them?
um,
Mm,
it's the last poem. I wrote this book really for me,
mhm,
regarding your test, stepping out, um, wake up and write life, be true to your truest self. But one of the last poems that I wrote was inspired by what sits in front of me.
mm,
And as an educator, educate means to bring forth. And I wrote this for my students. Um, and I think that's the whole cycle of life. I think that's one of the bigger questions. We start to, in our older ages, in our older age, we start to understand who we are as we're reaching back to help bring forth what's already inside them. We tell them,
mhm,
hey, you're not going to do it like me. You're going to do a remix. And I'm creating that
yeah.
space for you to do it.
Mhm,
People made that space for me. And that's what I want to make for the kids that I work with.
yeah. 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 So when you look at life, when you look at the world, would you say that there are some big questions that people are asking? And if so, can you think of one or two of them? What do people want to know?
Yeah. I think people want to know what's the meaning of this life.
Hmm.
The Stoics have been asking that from then. That's what philosophy is, how to live a good life. And I think all of us are actually answering that with how we live. We have an approach to living. That's one question.
Hmm.
Um, I think people are asking, who am I? I think life
Hmm.
continually asks us, who am
Yeah.
I? And that's a question you as an individual have to answer.
Yeah.
I answered that when I was 16, and I revisit
Wow.
that poem again and again.
At 16, you had an answer. That's impressive. What was your answer?
I think we have an answer at each step of our life,
Uh-huh.
and we're answering it again and again and again and again. It
Mhm.
was a poem I wrote that is called "I Am." It said, "I am a messenger, sanctified to speak with a divine voice, and know it was not of my own choice, rather God's will be done, because I am part of a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a special person used to
Mhm.
proclaim the praise of Him who called me out of
Mhm.
darkness into the marvelous light." You see, I
Mhm.
am the mic.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And the
like
Lord is,
it.
and it goes on and on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I like that. And also around your book, I'm not certain if someone else wrote this, but it says that you have a sense of what it feels like to be, or at least to feel lost and overwhelmed, and that your book speaks to people who may feel that way. Is that true? That you have a feeling of what that's like, and does your book kind of speak to it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a poem called "You Are Lost." Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Um, it is short. Uh, would you like me to read it?
Yes,
I
please
can give
read
you the
it.
gist. Okay.
No, no.
For now,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. For now you are lost, tossed about with fear and doubt of exactly where you stand, unplanned and unsure, yet aware of the inner dialogue murmuring, "Where are you? You're lost, but not exhausted. Rather, you're calm and collected, not letting it show, because from past and future selves, your present inner soul already knows. You're okay. Yes, you're okay. Because you've been lost many times before today, and the truth is, this instant only temporarily remains. And with that thought, your fears and doubts subside, they fade. With the understanding, this temporary state of being is merely a point on the path you are passing. It is simply an impermanent place in life of just another first day. Because now you are lost, yet you already know this is not where you will stay. Get
Mhm.
clear and know where you want to go. Now take the next step.
Yeah.
Yes, you are back on the path, and that's like you. You have found your way.
Uh-huh. There's goodness in that poem. There's goodness in that. And that's a pointer for individuals who may feel lost. But, as I said, those who write about your book and about you says the same thing about the feeling of being overwhelmed. What can you tell us about that?
Um, you know, I can tell you, step out. There you go. You know what I love? You know what I love, Stephen? What's really going through my mind? I wrote there's a piece inside here. It's talking about future Marcus reflecting on the past words. He said, I remember
Mm-hmm.
where you were when you wrote those. And future Marcus is sending gratitude back to past Marcus for showing up and doing what he needed at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read You Are Lost, it's speaking to me now in the moment, yet I remember where I was when I wrote that. And it's still true. And then now I'm going to read for you Step Out. And it's just like the beautiful thing about Marcus's words were they're perennial. There's truth about human development. And when people ask me to share it, I then realize, oh yeah, this is what I needed. I needed this for this moment. So thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. You're talking about being overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
To step out from your dreams, leave empty slumbers and be a person who is aware, a person of no fear, be a person who dares greatly to take one step, unafraid of where your feet will find a path or where the thousand of steps yet to come will land, rather finding faith in the fulfillment in that one single step. That's where progress has begun. Step out and break your indecision because timidness breeds delay. Days soon slipping away, leaving you to lament over time lost, bearing the weighty cost of empty thoughts of could have been. Rather, find boldness, magic, power, and genius from within when you step and
Yeah.
just be.
Yeah. I like it, Marcus Aurelius, because, as someone who's consuming your poetry, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, then I stop. I may say, that's it. I'm just done. But then your poem says, don't quit, don't stop, step out. I love that encouragement that comes from your work. There's something else that I saw in your work that struck me, and it's the
Okay.
reset, the reset button, the reset. And I said reset button
All
because,
right.
yeah, I can imagine having a button on my desk if I'm feeling, lost or whatever. I could hit that reset
Mm-hmm.
button, and then somehow, you know, as you put it though, get grounded
Mm-hmm.
in the present moment. And that's why I wanted to take you. Talk to us about that because a lot of people need to feel that they can make a course correction. And I think you address that in
Mm.
your book as well.
Yeah, and in many pieces. Let me see. You know, a few stood out to me, and I'm just gonna pull what comes naturally. There's one, How
Okay.
to Find Your Essence. It says always act in your truth, doing what you know is right, keeping in mind this life lesson. Denials of your being are not rejection. Rather, they are divine leadings and redirections. Back to your core, back to your birthright as an infinite being, back to
Yeah.
seeing your true reflection,
Uh,
back to your true you and all you are in your infinite
mm,
blessings.
yeah, man, that's powerful. I'm telling you, yeah. Okay. I'm not sure this is the last one that I'm going to move on to something else,
All
but
right. All right.
I'm not sure if this came from your book or from something,
Okay.
because I said, for me now, maybe a lot came up around you because I was looking for you. Maybe I'm unique.
Yeah.
But it said something about it raises the question about control. just
Okay.
addressing a human being. And it's like, who is in control? Are you in control? Or, if you recall either writing about that or someone writing, about this, about you, just enlighten us a little bit about personal control and connect it to life and the divine and all that
Yeah.
is.
Well, while I can't pull a poem right now speaking specifically of control, one thing
Mhm.
that this is not in my book,
Mhm.
but I believe you are a creator. And what a creator does is they look at what's in their control. And really, I believe it's only three things. It's where you put your attention, your perception, that means the stories, the beliefs that you form about what you put your attention on, and then the action you take.
Yeah.
Outside of which, like you always have those three controls. That's something Viktor
Right.
Frankl said. You always control how you're going to respond based on what you focus on and how you react to it.
Mhm.
Um, don't ever forget that you're creative. The opposite of a
Right.
creative is a victim who says, "Woe is me, why is this happening to me?" But rather recognize where your control is in those three
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that because I mean it's simple yet powerful. And I hope that our viewers and our listeners will go back to what you just said because there are a lot of simple principles that are enormously powerful, right? You know, simple
Mhm.
yet powerful. Like Jesus reportedly said to the man who couldn't walk, pick up your bed and walk. How simple is that? But yet powerful indeed.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
look, there's something else that I want to ask you about before we get into your work with parents and
Okay.
their children. I don't know where I found this, but I think you were talking about the wisdom, and maybe I'm paraphrasing it this way, that you gained from a fifth grader. It was something about a
Mhm.
fifth grader. I'm not sure if it was at school or whatever. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? And if so, tell us a story, and then you're not with me, and I can say
Steven,
more.
I have so many stories from my fifth graders of the wisdom I got from them.
Uh,
I think to teach is to learn twice
yeah,
because like
yeah.
you share things and you get it back to their eyes. So I have so many stories. I don't know which one you're talking about. I'd love to share with you one though.
Okay, share one, then I'll come back to this one if it's not the one I want. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So this is a book that my fifth graders gave me called The
Okay,
Goodbye
okay.
Book.
So if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, Marcus just showed us a book. And what's the title of the book, Marcus?
The Goodbye Book. And it's a book that my fifth graders they made. And it's filled with stick figures with afros.
Ah, that's
And
wonderful.
there's 60 of them, and they each filled out a page, and then they took the
Mhm.
book around school, and they had all the teachers sign it, and then all my colleagues sign it. And in the back, they made like their own Pinterest, and they cut
Oh,
these out. They cut out also pictures from our field trip,
that's wonderful. And once again, for
and
those of you listening, Marcus is holding up a book showing us various things that his students put into the book.
and this is the story. So they're presenting it to me on the last day, and they call
Mhm.
me up on stage. And Penny, who was the head of all of this, she says, "Mr. Marcus, turn to the last page, turn to the last page." And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, okay. And the last page, it's a sheet that says, "You of all people deserve a happy ending."
Wow.
And we always used to talk about stories. I used to talk about narratives with them and so on. And in my head, I thought, and it wasn't doubt, don't get me wrong. I said, "Do I deserve a happy ending?" Because it's just critical thinking. And I said, "Yes, I do."
Mhm.
And then I asked, "How does that happen?" And the voice said, "You write it."
Mm.
And that's where write life comes from. It's like, yeah, maktub, it is written. I'm writing it. And right when it said you write it, I got choked up, right?
Mm.
And Penny looks at me, she says, "Are you crying?" And then to which
Mm.
she hugged me. You never deny a kid a hug, right? You don't initiate it,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
don't deny it.
Right.
And when she hugged me, I dropped to my knees, and then all the fifth graders crowded around me and they huddled around and
Wow.
hugged me.
Oh my.
And I was like, "Oh man,
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
a wonderful."
That's wonderful. I'm glad you shared that. But I also let me see if I can pull this one out of you because I think it's also telling. it was something. Well, let me just tell a story. If it doesn't come back to you, then I'll just leave it and move on. But it's something like a kid is at school and acting out with a bunch of other boys, and either you had a conversation with them, or and then the kid went home and had a conversation with his father, and the father asked one powerful question: "Is this the
Where did you
person?"
find this?
And
Yeah,
look, man,
that's
look,
it. That's
you
it.
said
I
you
remember
said
that.
you said we're all connected, right? So this is just a display of our connection. So if you have the story, tell us about it.
Yeah, that was I can't call his name, but I know exactly who it is.
Uh,
Um, yes, because that was speaking to his identity. He was acting out, and when I say acting out, he was not behaving as expected, right? And I really do think in parenting and in teaching, you give kids a space to express themselves, yet with boundaries. And instead of shaming him or blaming, his father said
yeah.
something that is in alignment with my teaching. He asked, "Is this the type of person you want to be?"
Hmm.
And that question right there brings a person back to their core. It lets you understand you are the creator of the identity you are going to bear.
Yeah.
And is this the type of person you want to be? And if you hold a person in dignity, people move towards your expectations. And it's like, I will support you in being all that you can be of where you want to go, but I need you to understand who you want to be.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is exactly right. And I remember I used to mention that story to him throughout the years.
Hmm.
Well, 2 years I taught afterwards, and he would just smile. He's like, I always loved when your
Yeah.
dad said that. Yeah.
I think that's a powerful question. I mean, sometimes one powerful question can bring a person out of despair. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's really really nice. There's something else I wanted to ask you in connection with that. It may come back to me, but I'll let it go for now. But I want to move on now and talk with you about your work. I want to get deeper. We've been talking about it broadly, but I want to get into your work. How would you describe your work with parents and their children?
I would describe it as, again, what I say is human development.
Mhm.
I am working with the parent as a life coach, transformational coach, yet I'm using the thing that's most relevant to them. A message is always impactful when it's relevant, and that is your child. I never tell a parent how to parent. I give them approaches, and mind you, nor am I ignorant from parenting approaches. So what I do practice is autonomy supportive parenting, which is very effective during the transitioning years. When I say transitioning years, moving from dependent to independent.
Yeah.
And autonomy supportive parenting is recognizing the wisdom in the child to say, look, I want you to try more things independently. These are the rules and regulations and boundaries, and I'm here to support you in that. I really do believe this is how the divine interacts with us. It's like, yeah, no, no, I
Mm.
want you to have every desire of your heart is worthy of having as you follow these boundaries and rules. And one of them is life supports those who support life.
Mhm.
Like as you start to support others,
Mhm.
I want you to experience the fullness of this.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, parenting. I'm really glad you're doing this work. Just I am a parent, and we all are surrounded by parents. So happy that you're doing this work. But let me ask you, and I think you might have said something about this because it said things about you just can't come to me. It says something about parenting being a lonely or can be a lonely undertaking. Is parenting a lonely undertaking or what?
Well, we're not meant to parent alone.
Hmm.
And the thing about unpaid caregiving, because that's really what parenting is. Um, Three things. It's emotionally taxing.
Hmm.
It's financially taxing if it's unpaid, you're supporting another person. And then three, it's often done with other people. And when I say unpaid caregiving, if you're taking care of an older parent, if you're taking care of a person with special needs, these three factors still stand there. There's this wonderful book called The Magic of Caregiving.
Mm.
And oftentimes we relegate this work to women. And we're saying, we say if we're business minded over here, getting it over here, we don't have time for
Mhm.
the caregiving work. But if you understand how to care for somebody and you're caring for them for the one sole fact of they are worthy of being cared for, it's transformative.
Mm.
Um, it can be burdensome, and I think this is something of the developed world where you feel like you're parenting alone
Mhm.
and you get burnt out.
Yeah.
But we were meant to parent in pods. It's called allo parenting.
Mhm.
It can be. It can be. It's not supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right, though. I think it isn't a phrase about the village. It takes a village, to raise a child. Yeah. So yeah, I think you're right.
It
We're
takes a
not
village to
meant to
support a
parent.
parent.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Yeah, and I guess today, and we're in the early part of the 21st century. Someone could be listening to this 50 years from now. It's 2024, and we are right in the mix, of this digital age. Is parenting more difficult today
Mm.
because of the digital age, or what do you think?
So every generation has its unique challenges. And
Mm,
the unique challenge of this age is fractured attention. So if the major question life is asking us, who are you? If I can't introspect, if I can't look inside, and if I can't get in touch with my emotions, because emotions are actually indicators of how the outside world is influencing our inside world, right?
mm,
If I'm growing up on this screen, when that screen closes, I don't know where to put my attention or how long to put my attention. That means I'm growing up. Remember what I said. If I feel safe and I feel loved,
yeah.
that means that I can learn. If I feel safe and I feel loved, that means that I can grow. But if I constantly feel like I'm not safe, if I constantly wondering, am I worthy of this experience of life?
Mhm.
I'm gonna have a story that causes me to shrink. That is actually the opposite of life. That's where I think of all this. The mental well-being crisis is not there, or
Mm,
that's the cause of it. Jonathan Haidt just wrote the book, The Anxious Generation. I mean, I'm taking it a bit further,
mhm.
but that is the challenge of our time, fractured attention. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, especially with, cell phones. Some kids as early as 5 got their own independent smartphone, So, but okay, uh, the digital age it does raise an issue, and as you said, each generation has their challenges. Yeah, but
Mind you, I also if it's a problem, there's a solution, and I think there is a solution. But um,
what's the solution?
would you like to? It's what it's always been. We are the stories we tell ourselves. I
Uh,
think artificial intelligence is going to allow us to tell more specialized stories to an individual over a longer timeline. And if we
mm,
use the technology for that, technology is just a tool. But if we intentionally use it to amplify an empowering story inside an individual, I think we could use it to set them up for a whole different
mhm,
life.
mhm. Yeah, and children also need guidance, right? So sometimes they may need to be asked to shut it down, turn it off. Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
most definitely. Like what I'm saying right now is that I fully agree with initiatives of don't give kids a cell phone until 16 or eighth grade. Like, again, I respect the parents parenting, but also I respect the science that says kids who
Mhm.
get this before puberty, they're experiencing a lot of mental health issues
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
forming their image, especially girls, because girls
hmm
actually deal with a
hmm
lot of reputation
hmm
and the internet. It's
Yeah.
it's it tells you about your self-worth if
Indeed.
you let
That's
it.
that's for sure. And yeah, oh boy, tell you what, we parents have a lot to learn about that. I want to move on to something. We just want to continue looking at your book and working with parents. And we got to slow it down here because so many things came to mind. Because you talk to parents, you talk about nurturing, you talk about protecting their children, and all of that. And I want to add, and I'm sure this is important to you. I want to add the word trauma in the
Okay.
mix because preteens and teens, in your category or children of any age may encounter trauma. Has that shown up? Have you worked with parents who share stories about their children being traumatized? And how do you work with them?
So let's get on the same working definition of the word trauma, because words
Yeah.
don't have meanings, people have meanings for words, right?
Mhm.
So I mentioned earlier that growth is a stress response. We can't grow unless we're stressed. And my understanding of trauma, as I see it, is unresolved stress.
Mhm.
Trauma is experienced in the moment when we look back at something stressful that happened to us and we don't make sense of it.
Mhm.
And I'll give you a real example. And this comes from Bruce Perry's work. And he wrote a book with Oprah, What Happened to You, looking at
Mhm.
trauma, how people respond to trauma. A building can be burning and three people experience it three different ways. There could be a kid who just sees a conflagration and is just awed at the fire. There could be a preteen, an adolescent child who had all her memories in there and maybe some loved ones. And like those loved ones have passed and she sees this as a big loss. And there could be a firefighter who says, I show up in moments like this to rescue people. They're all experiencing the fire, but they have three different experiences of the fire. My point being is when we go to therapy, when we're in circles with other people processing what we do through, there are different ways we cope. There are different ways we hit back and we rewrite our stories. And I think that's how we process trauma in the moment.
Mhm.
So that's all a long roundabout way of saying, um, as professionals, and I'm a educator, and I do have life experience, but I always recommend people to professionals if depending on
Mhm.
how deep the trauma is. But then also as a member of the community and as a trusted member of humanity, I'm here to help serve you and help you process your trauma because one way we do process it is through conversation and through stories and exchanging and making sense of it, making sense of the stress that
Mhm.
happened and seeing how we are changed
Mhm.
for the better by that happened. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I like it. I've been listening to Gabor Mate. Do you know that name? Gabor Mate?
yes, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
He's doing a lot about trauma, saying a lot about trauma, writing a lot about trauma, and educating us about it. But I'm also curious about how we support children because this is where you come in. Supporting
sure.
children. How do you work with parents to support children who may have a wound, may carry a wound by something that happened yesterday? How do you get parents to acknowledge even? Because my guess is that some parents don't want to acknowledge that their child has been wounded. That's my guess. I could be dead wrong.
Sure, sure. Some parents don't like to acknowledge their own. I'll tell you this, in acknowledging your own or somebody else's, all
Mm,
growth starts with telling the truth.
mm, mhm. Yeah,
And then we can get into relative what is true. But you can't manage what you don't mention. So that's why conversations are important and actually bringing in the perspectives of all people involved.
yeah,
And that you're able. If you want to help your kid with this, you have to bring them into it. If you want to help yourself with it, you have to start by telling the truth,
yeah.
right? Now, Gabor Mate wrote "Hold On to Your Child,"
Mhm,
speaking about how we nurture children during that developmental stage of making sure they're seen, soothed, and secure, and so on. So, but in creating an independent child, we then have to create tension of pushing them away. Like naturally, this
mhm,
is what happens during adolescence. Some people
mhm,
might see this as trauma. What it is it's tension. And you try to make sure that your child is still, it, they know that they are, and they are safe in this separation.
mhm,
And that's what support is. If a person is falling short of an expectation, it means one of three things. It's really two, but one of three things. Either one, they don't have the skills to meet the expectation. Skills just comes with repetitions.
mm,
Two, they don't feel supported in making an effort to gain the skills. Either they don't have the skills or they don't feel supported. Three, it's they really don't care, so they're not making an effort. But if they care about it, they will. And kids think, oh no, I'm not meeting expectations, so something's wrong with me. No, that's where we support them and say nothing's wrong with you. But
Yeah.
this is how you continue to make it. Then we
Yeah.
have to be aware of trauma responses in our own, and it's a whole lot to it. But yeah,
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, and but I like what you've said elsewhere, and perhaps even in your book, is that we want to move children from dependent. There's a time in their lives when they are dependent, and I think the second phase, and you may not have used an ordering phrase like this, was that parents may want to consider moving children to interdependent. Is that about what you've said?
yeah, yes. Well, it's the three steps. It's dependent, and then we move
Mhm.
them to independence. Oh, you can
Okay.
take care of yourself.
Hmm.
Full maturity of where we're trying to move everybody eventually is interdependent. That means
Uh-huh.
I promise to take care of me to be in service to
Mhm.
you. If you promise to take care of you to me, it's
Yeah, I love
interdependence.
it. I
Um,
love it. I love
some
the
cultures
stages.
lean, some cultures, yeah,
Mhm.
it's all good.
Yeah. So holding space seems to be huge for you. The phrase that is holding space for parents or holding space for children, holding space for others. What does holding space actually mean when you say it?
Yeah. Um, holding space for yourself
Mm,
is where it has to start. And what that means for me is there's this line that says there's no greater privilege than to be who you are.
mm,
To follow that up, I'm following it by a guy named Jonathan Donahue, a poet from Ireland. He said, the duty of privilege is absolute integrity. When somebody else is dysregulated or losing their mind and they're not sure of who they are, if I know who I am, I will be a source of security for you.
mhm.
I'm the same.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know what? I will hold the space for you until you can hold it for yourself.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's what it means.
yeah. I like that. I mean, if you're going to be an effective coach or anything, if someone shows up in a certain way, confused, not know who they are, boy, it would be nice to be with someone who knows who they are and who can be with them until they can settle down and recognize what you probably would say is the divine that's in them. I'm not trying to speak for you, but I've been around you enough
You're
to
good.
know
You're good.
that that's true to you. Look, before we go, I got to talk with you about your work, what should I call your paradigm? And I think it's called the show
Mm,
up framework. What is
yes.
that? And if spoon feed us now, what is the show up framework?
The show up framework is, you know what it is? It's an
Mhm.
approach to human development,
Mm,
um, personal development, and I use this with parents so that they can understand what it is, that they can use it with their kids. S is it starts with a strong identity. As you know yourself, you'll understand the secrets of God's and man, right? Looking at your virtues and values and knowing who you are, identity. All behavior comes from identity. Second is H, hold space for collaboration and critical thinking. That means, again, this is autonomy, supportive parenting. A kid is thinking, what's wrong with me?
mm,
Saying nothing's wrong with you. Rather, this is what wisdom is. And
mhm.
you actively listen to them to make sure that you help them process what's inside their mind. You're not giving them the answer.
Yeah,
You're giving them your concern and saying, hey, this is what I know. What do you know? And let's come up with a solution together.
yeah.
And you're teaching them how to critically think through their problems. Always open up communication. The quality of our communication is directly related to the quality of our life.
Uh-huh.
And it's just different tactics on how we can communicate with our kids.
Mhm.
W is wonder and explore this world together.
Mm,
So life is we say be resilient. Resilience is a passive strength. It means something happens and we can buffer it. Life is about
Hmm.
expansion. It means to go out there,
Yeah.
be curious, to explore,
Yeah.
and explore again from your identity.
Hmm.
And then UP is unveil your potential, it means celebrate.
Uh-huh.
When a person lives into their identity, say that's like you showed up. And yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for being you.
I like it. I like it. The show up framework is the platform that Marcus shares. One last thing is you used the word somewhere. Look, I don't know where I got it, but I think you used the phrase emotional tuning.
Hey,
Is that a part of the show up framework?
yes, it's a phrase that I use
Mm,
when I'm talking about it. And really what it is empathy.
mm,
But in Dan Siegel's work, he talks about being seen. Whenever we're feeling emotions, if we have a psychologically wise adult in our life, if we have a wise person, coach, or caregiver, mentor, they'll look at us and say, hey, I'm seeing something. Can you help me explain it?
mm,
And they'll let you walk through it and you explain it. And then they'll say, oh, it kind of looks like this. Oh, this is what it means. And you're getting on the same wavelength. And that's when a person feels seen. They're like, this person gets me.
mm.
They understand me.
Yeah.
There's no persuasion without identification. And what it is you're tuning into the person and you're settling by saying, yeah, I get it. No, I get it. I understand why you're doing this.
Mhm.
Here's some possible paths forward. But until you take the path, I'm here to support you on that step. And I get why you're here.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Marcus, is there anything else you want to share with us before we say goodbye today?
Hey. um, one thing I always do say is in parenting, we will fall short of our expectations. Mom
Mhm.
guilt is a big thing, dad guilt is a big thing. However, I think it's a feature, not a bug, for us to repair and reconnect.
Mhm.
When we fall short, we it's apologizing. Repair and reconnection is saying, this is not who I am. This is
Mhm.
who I choose to be. This is the actions I'll take going forward.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, when you do that, you're communicating to the person, I care about this relationship
Mhm.
and I'm committed to our growth. If you're
Mhm.
not committed to it, there are some relationships where it's just like, I did something wrong. I'm sorry for that. And I want to continue on without you.
Mhm.
However, with the familial relationships, you really don't do that. So let's continue on
Yeah.
forward together.
Yeah. That's nice. I like it. Marcus, I really enjoyed my time chatting with you today. Just want to thank you for saying yes when I invited you to join me on this podcast.
It's been a wonderful time. You were one of the first to say, oh, I saw this. And I'm thinking on my toes, what do you see and where do you see it? Let's go. It was a fun time. It was a fun
Yeah,
time.
it's a lot of fun for sure. Okay, well, you've been listening to the Possibility Action Network podcast. Our guest today has been Marcus Aurelius. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton. Until next time, good day.
You are not alone, just keep on going. Just press on, press on.